On October 3, the mother, her 3 children, and a visiting relative were killed in the Turkish border town Akkakkal when a Syrian bomb hit near their home. The Turkish military retaliated, shelling Syrian military targets just across the border. The following day, the Turkish parliament passed a motion allowing military force to be used in Syria. Then, on October 10, a Syrian Airlines passenger jet en route from Russia was forced to land in Turkey, where Turkish authorities searched it for weapons. These incidents were the latest in a series of calamities that has all but shredded the long "Thank you for trying" verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Border between Turkey and Syria, which had once been alive. But the tension had been building for a long time. For Turkey, the impact of the violence in Syria has been profound, particularly in the border area. As Syria unraveled, Turks watched their neighbors' Kurdish northeast, which they worried would be taken over by the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party PKK and used to launch attacks into Turkey. Meanwhile, refugees were spilling across the border. Turkey is now host to over 100,000 refugees, and the camps and nearby towns where they live also house rebel-free Syrian army. Thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Soldiers, who the Turkish government has been supporting, along with their civilian counterparts in the opposition near Syria, that support is evident. In April I visited a clinic for free Syrian army soldiers in Antakya, on the border. The recuperating soldiers credited Turkey not just for medical aid but also for assistance going back into Syria to fight. Turkish authorities, they told me, close one eye when they crossed. Beside Syrian flags they had hung a Turkish one and a picture of a Ataturk. The flags were a gesture of allegiance from the FSA fighters to the Turkish government, and thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. The secrecy around the clinic seemed nothing more than part of a carefully constructed, media-ready image. The clinic wasn't meant to be secret, it was there to be seen and visited and reported on to garner support for the FSA, and it seemed inevitable then that this open bolstering of the opposition would lead to cross-border fighting and the suggestion of war, as it has. 2 other incidents have pulled Turkey closer to war. In April, refugees in the Kilis refugee camp were hit when Syrian forces fired shells across the border. 2 months later, the Turkish jet was "Thank you for trying" verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Shot down by Syrian forces, which claimed that the plane had violated Syrian airspace. Both incidents infuriated the public already opposed to the Assad regime, and terrified those living close to the camps and the border. The Turkish government was criticized for not reacting strongly enough and for failing to protect its citizens, and so when troops fired back, earlier this month, it seemed to be a response not just to the deaths in Akkakkal but also to the violence in Kilis and the downed plane. After the bomb fell in Akkakkal, Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan said, with "Thank you for trying" verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Characteristic directness. You should be ready at any moment to go to war if it is necessary. If you are not ready for this, you are not a state. If you are not ready for this, you are not a nation. But even those Turks who had wished for a more aggressive reaction months ago didn't seem eager for war. Erdogan didn't get the last word on the subject. On the day after Parliament voted to authorize force, activists who in Turkey seemed to spring up and mobilize at a moment's notice filled Istanbul's Taksim Square to protest the government's Syria "Thank you for trying" verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Policy. Their fervor reflected what polls have shown, that a large majority of Turks disagree with Turkey's Syria policy, which they worry has the country willfully diving into the chaos. The wariness is understandable. It's a brutal picture across the southern border, worlds apart from the functioning and pleasant streets of Istanbul. If Erdogan is going to drag Turkey into a foreign war, Turks won't go willingly. At the protests, people chanted against war with Syria. But the real battle seemed to be with Erdogan and his Justice and Development Party AKP. Protesters accuse the AKP of imperialism, of "Thank you for trying" verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Warmongering, and of pandering to Western allies like the U.S. Others criticized the AKP for its overtly Islamic identity, which its opponents say goes against Turkey's secular roots. For these Turks, Syria is either the last straw or an excuse to chant against a government they never liked. Erdogan hadn't declared war. In fact, he had said, "We could never be interested in starting the war," but the protesters didn't believe him. Most of the public is against the war, Yardım Turkosu, a representative for the Turkish Human Rights Association, which was part of the protest and which opposes any military. Thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Involvement in Syria, told me over email. Then he steered the conversation away from war with Syria to concerns about Turkey's leaders in general. The AKP has been constituting an authoritarian democracy and would like to dominate not only the citizens of the Republic of Turkey but also the Middle East. While Erdogan would have his country be a model for the countries in transition after the Arab Spring, his opponents are eager to point out Turkey's flaws: lack of minority rights, crackdown on freedom of expression, a broken judicial system, and now its policy regarding Syria. Turkey's policy. Thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Is seen as too aggressive, too hawkish, sin-indulgent, the Turkish foreign policy expert at the Carnegie Endowment told me. The refusal to support military action, what Dulgent termed fundamental allergy to international intervention, is a legacy of Turkey's own turbulent past and its failed foreign policies. Turks are still recovering from a military coup that, decades ago, pitched the country into violence. And they remain in the midst of civil war with the PKK that has stretched on for 3 decades now, and which in the past year has intensified considerably. Turks know the toll of conflict. They link their thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Economic prosperity to their political stability. Until recently they got along with their neighbors as a matter of policy. That policy was official and had a name: zero problems with neighbors. By comparison, the past few weeks a relatively tiny battle in the greater Syrian conflict has looked to Turks like full-fledged war. The legacy of this zero problems policy, coupled with the feelings of regional dominance, steers public opinion against the war. Turks still have not bought into this idea that what happens in Syria is a matter for other countries, Dulgent said. They don't think that Syria can realistically threaten. Thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. A country like Turkey, they see it as a distant threat. Istanbul is indeed far from Akakale, where the woman and her children were killed. It is very far from the refugee camps where over 100,000 Syrian refugees now live, and far from the border, which FSA soldiers cross every day in both directions. If you come here, you see the real tension. Yamazakansi, the friend and journalist for Al Jazeera who has been reporting from the border region Hadi for the past few months, told me. Like in Istanbul, the Turks living along the border thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Are against a war with Syria. Some are pro-Assad. There is an Alawite minority along the border, and the Assads are Alawites, not to be confused with Turkish Alawis, but more are simply worried for their lives and livelihood. They know that any battles will be fought in their front yards. Before the conflict began, the Turkey-Syria border was a productive dotted line, separating families, friends, and business partners. Hadi has a pronounced Syrian influence in its language, food, and culture. The road connecting Turkey's Gaziantep to Syria's Aleppo was once heavily trafficked by shoppers, tourists, and truck drivers, but is thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Now quiet. Some towns are literally hemmed by the border. Nusaybin, in Turkey, is nestled inside a U-shaped curve in the barbed wire, like it is being ladled into Syria. And Akakale is just barely in Turkey. The distinction between the two countries never appeared more arbitrary than when the Syrian bomb fell. The farmers, the waiters, the bank officers, they are the most afraid of the war, Akinci told me. The hotels here are full of journalists, not tourists. Businesses are fading. People talk every day about villages being attacked. It's really tense. Then there are the refugees, who thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Role cannot be understated. They constitute the portion of Turkey-Syria policy that officials refer to as the humanitarian side. The military side, so far, has consisted mostly of support for the FSA. But as the violence in Kilis and elsewhere has proven, those two missions cannot be kept entirely separate. Turks aren't very happy about this, either. The refugees are increasingly being seen as both a symptom of Syria's war and a sign of Turkey entering it. The recent poll of urban Turks revealed that 66% disapprove of the refugees coming at all. The government is thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Being too loose in terms of keeping civilians separate from the military, spoke the Durokan, the refugee advocate at the Helsinki Citizens' Assembly, told me. He estimates that an additional 50,000 or more Syrians live in Turkey unregistered, avoiding the camps for fear of violence because of the FSA element living there, which they worry makes them vulnerable to Syrian attacks. I see the government which is trying very hard to live up to the pretensions of being a regional power, Durokan said. When 5 civilians are killed, or a jet is downed, you feel like you have to respond. Thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. But there is fracturing in Turkey's anti-war movement. Taksim's protesters, for instance, found a harsh critic in the journalist Mustafa Akyol, who called them self-righteous and disturbingly immoral in an article that week. By attacking the AKP in stronger terms than they ever condemned the Assad regime, they are condoning further violence, he wrote. They keep on defending Syria's sovereignty, which basically means that all tyrants should have the right to slaughter their own populations while the world should not interfere in their domestic affairs. But, still, he wrote, none of this means that Turkey should launch a thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. War against the Syrian regime. In a more diplomatic email to me, Akyol conceded that while he disagrees with the protesters' rhetoric, he is, like them, against a unilateral war with Syria. The anti-war movement in Turkey is a colorful coalition now, he told me. The AKP parliamentarian Samo Tayyar came out with the winning quote in the saber-rattling category when he said the Turkish army could be in Damascus in 3 hours. But even declarations like his are, at this point, more a symptom of nationalism than a real statement of support for war. That this nationalism has thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Not been exploited to garner public support for entering Syria is perhaps the best evidence that the government does not, for now, really intend to go to war. But the real test, Ulja said, will come if there is ever a multilateral intervention in Syria. Will Turkey take part, and will they have public backing or not? Having adopted such a strong rhetoric, there is the belief that Turkey has a major responsibility, he said. But if the government doesn't have the Turkish public opinion on its side, then it will be very costly politically.